السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. إن شاء الله تعالى we'll start كتاب الصلاة today إن شاء الله تعالى from the book of al-Murbi. And at the end, inshallah, after we finish this session, there were some questions for the previous chapter in al-Hayd. We'll go through them inshallah ta'ala. So but start inshallah ta'ala with كتاب الصلاة inshallah. The Zad, the matn says كتاب الصلاة تجب. I'm reading here only the matn of a Zad that were required to memorize, and which is in red here. تجب على كل مسلم مكلف إلا حائضا ونفساء. And then it continues with more. So here going to الروض كتاب الصلاة, the chapter of the Salah. So after finishing all of the chapters of الطهارة, the purification, now all of that was all conditions for the most important thing, which is as-salah, the most important act. So this is how the proper sequence of things in the books of al-fiqh. So he says here في الشرح في اللغة الدعاء. And since we're concerned here about the matters of fiqh, the ahkam, the rulings, so the subject of the virtue, the importance of it, the many ayat and the many hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that talks about the salah, this is to be also dealt in a different context, of course. So في اللغة, as always have been mentioned, the definition linguistically and religiously. في اللغة الدعاء, the meaning of الصلاة is الدعاء. وصل عليهم, that means make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. قال تعالى وصل عليهم أي أدعو لهم, that means make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. He says وفي الشرع, and he mentioned something else afterwards inshallah, but وفي الشرع religiously, because it's not just any dua, it's not just any dua that a person can make and that be sufficient for him, but it's أقوال وأفعال مخصوصة مفتتحة بالتكبير مختتمة بالتسليم. أقوال, statement, speech, and أفعال, action, specific ones, مخصوصة. And that's what the definition, very precise words, and then the details come as it's mentioned also in the definition of al-wudu and so on. مخصوصة, very specific actions, has to be done exactly the way that we get to know from the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مفتتحة بالتكبير. مفتتحة refers to as-salah. مفتتحة, that's why it's with a fatha. That means it starts بالتكبير with Allahu Akbar. مختتمة, sealed, ended. It ends with التسليم, saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So this is where the salah religiously أقوال وأفعال مخصوصة مفتتحة بالتكبير مختتمة بالتسليم. He says سميت صلاة, it was named salah. He says لاشتمالها على الدعاء, because it has dua in it, because part of the salah, of course, the entire salah is dua, and the dua, as we know, that it's of two types. There is dua الثناء على الله عز وجل, the dua of praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and dua الطلب, dua السؤال, that you, the second type of it is asking, and both are dua. And the salah, the entire salah from the beginning to the end, is basically dua, either praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or asking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see that clearly in Surah Al-Fatiha and the rest of the salah. He says مشتقة من الصلوين. مشتقة من الصلوين. Now the meaning of it is mentioned. Now he talks here about al-ishtiqaq. That means the root of it, where it comes from, as-salawain, right? Which is as-salawain. What is as-salawain? هما عرقان من جانبي الذنب. الصلوين, this is مثنى. Salah is one. عرقان, two nerves that come from both sides of الذنب. الذنب is the tailbone. So two nerves on the both sides of the back of the person, and that's why it's a word that refers to the back of the person. وقيل عظمان ينحنيان في الركوع والسجود. Also it's said to be two bones that get bent in ruku' and in sujud. So this is where also it comes from. So the meaning of it is dua, and it comes also from a sila, it's a connection. And the ishtiqaq originally comes from these two nerves or these two bones that moves when a person makes ruku' and sujood. وفرضت ليلة الإسراء. Salah was made as an obligation in the night of al-Isra, as we know that this is the act of worship and shows the importance of it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this obligation to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, to the entire ummah, when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was taken physically from his home all the way to the seventh heavens, and he was given in it the fardiyat as-salah, to show the importance of it. So now he says tajib, that means it's an obligation. Al-khamsu, meaning of course the 5 daily salah. تجب الخمس, the 5, في كل يوم وليلة, every night, every day and night, على كل مسلم مكلف. So now this is the wujub. The wujub is upon who? And the shurut of al-wujub. Once a person have these conditions, then the salah is obligatory upon him. And the word wujub or fard, as we know that they're both synonyms to the same thing. It's not like it's of a lesser importance than the fard. All of it is the same. It's only different terminologies, different contexts, but of course here it refers to the obligation. There's nothing more obligation as an obligation more than the salah after the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ala kulli Muslim, upon every Muslim, mukallaf. Mukallaf, that means he is been given subject to the taklif, to the obligations to be fulfilled. And with al-mukallaf, what is al-mukallaf? أي بالغ عاقل, someone that is بالغ, and we talked about that. Who is the mukallaf? Someone that reached the age of puberty. عاقل, sane, so that takes away the child. The child is not mukallaf, and the insane is not mukallaf. بالغ عاقل ذكر أو أنثى, whether it's male or female, أو خنثى, even the khuntha, the hermaphrodites, the one that is not in neither or physically. حر أو عبد أو مبعض, whether he is a free person or a slave, or مبعض. مبعض, that means he is half and half, that means some, from al-ba'd, that means he is abd, but he is half of that slave is free. He's about to free himself. He's paying off what his worth to free himself, made a deal with his owner or so. And the reason why also this is mentioned, so there's no exception, because in some of the obligations, it's not obligatory upon a slave. For example, Hajj, for example, is not obligatory upon him because he doesn't own himself, meaning his time. So, but for the salah, it doesn't matter whether he is abd or hur. Except إلا حائضا ونفساء, except the woman in her menses or after birth bleeding, that we talked about it in the previous chapter. فلا تجب عليهما, it is not obligatory upon them, and of course it's haram if she would do such a thing. And it's mentioned here because a person would say, well, is it the same thing for someone sleeping, for example, or as it's going to be mentioned afterwards, the reason why the hayd and nufasa are mentioned, because they don't make up the salah. They don't make up the salah. So that's why it's mentioned here. So تجب على كل مسلم مكلف إلا حائضا ونفساء. Then he says ويقضي. So again we said تجب. So as far as the صحة, the validity of the salah, this can be, or شروط الصحة, which is different here, because if a child makes the salah is valid, as it's going to be mentioned, but it's not obligatory. So ويقضي من زال عقله بنوم أو إغماء أو سكر أو نحوه. Now here is the صحة of the salah. يقضي. Al-qada is to make up the salah if the time passes. That's the only time that we say qada, because if a person prays the salah in the time of the salah, that's not qada. So ويقضي, who is the one that to make qada, is the one that the time passed and he did not make the salah. So whether he's aware of things, or here he says من زال عقله, the one that his aql, his intellect, his reason, his sanity is removed. That means he's not conscious, basically. من زال عقله, that means he becomes unconscious. He lost his conscious with what? بنوم, whether it's by sleeping, أو إغماء. الإغماء is when someone faints. So he lost conscious. أو سكر, or intoxication. So any of these, if a person loses his conscious and then he regains it back, he goes back to his consciousness, then he has to make up the salah that he missed while being in that state, whether it's sleeping or fainting or intoxication. He says طوعا أو كرها, whether it's willingly طوعا or karha, or unwillingly, regardless of the sin, right? So a person would not say, oh, sukr, intoxication, that means it's permissible. Of course it's not. We're talking here specifically about the qada of the salah. Even if he committed a major sin, he still have to make up the salah that he missed, whether it's willingly or unwillingly. أو نحوه. So he says, ويقضي من زال عقله بنوم أو إغماء أو سكر أو نحوه, or the like of this. And this is always repeated in the mutun of the fiqh, because there are other things that are more than just these specific things that are mentioned. So the like of sleeping or fainting or intoxication, for example, كشرب دواء, like taking a medicine that makes the person loses conscious. And when you have, there are different levels of losing consciousness, but the things that the person is not able, he's not responsible for his actions. This is where, if he gains consciousness, then he makes up the salah. But if a person takes medicine or he's aware of what he's doing, right, then it means, of course, the salah is obligatory upon him. كشرب دواء لحديث من نام عن صلاة أو نسيها فليصليها إذا ذكرها. The hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, whoever sleeps عن صلاة, that means he missed the salah by sleeping, أو نسيها, or he forgot the salah, فليصليها إذا ذكرها, then let him pray it when he remembers it. He says رواه Muslim. So this is an obligation. وغشي على عمار ثلاثا. Ammar ibn Yasir radiallahu anhu, غشي. This is another word of al-ighma, غشي, and from the word, for example, al-ghashiyah, covered. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى, the night when it covers. So وَغُشِيَ عَلَى, that means Ammar has been covered over. That means with his consciousness, he lost conscious. He was fainted, in a coma, whatever. وَغُشِيَ عَلَى عَمَّارٍ ثَلَاثًا, 3 days. ثُمَّ أَفَاقَ وَتَوَضَّأ, then he gained consciousness after 3 days, and he made wudu. وَقَضَى تِلْكَ الثَّلَاث, and he made the qada, he made up the salah for these 3 days. But he mentioned here is the down in the bottom in the footnote about the narration, where some had said that it's not authentic, the statement or the action of Ammar radiallahu anhu. But this is again, al-qada is for those who fainted, and the ulama, they make it based on the qiyas of sleeping. It's not something that is, it's not like someone is being insane, for example, which takes a long time, or most of the time it's forever. So fainting, lost conscious for whatever period of time, then a person, when he gains consciousness, then is to make the salawat that he missed. The issue comes in if someone loses conscious for days and months and years, for example, right? And this is a debatable issue, but again, it's according to the madhab here, is if he comes back, then to make up the salah. And of course, sometimes it's beyond one's capacity, so it's a different situation. And the sins are not there because this is against the person's will. وَيَقْضِي مَنْ شَرِبَ مُحَرَّمًا. Here, a specific mas'ala here, مَنْ شَرِبَ مُحَرَّمًا, his rule is to make qada. So, مَنْ شَرِبَ مُحَرَّمًا, whoever drinks something haram, something forbidden, حتى زمن جنون طرأ متصلا به. He drank something haram. Till he reached a state or a time that while after he drank this haram, there was time that he was insane as a result of what he drank. طرأ, that means came onto him. It's not something continuously. It's not forever. طرأ شيء, that means came into him, temporary. متصلا به, connected with the fact that he drank the muharram, not separate, not after a few months, for example. So someone drank something intoxicant and he became intoxicant. So it means he lost his senses, but of course, this is levels. So if he drank it so much that he become exactly like a majnoon, because people can, in some levels, they can be aware of what they're saying and doing. But here in this case, he becomes like a majnoon. So does the ruling of al-junoon applies to him, or because al-majnoon, his salah is not valid and he is not to make up the salah if he gains conscious afterwards, if he becomes sane afterwards. Al-junoon is different. But here, someone specifically that he is not majnoon, is not someone that is insane, but when he drank something intoxicant, he become majnoon, but only for a short period of time, connected to the fact that he drank this muharram. So yaqdi, he has to make up the salah. The hurma, that it's haram, this is of course is obvious. But to make up the salah, even though that he was in the state of junoon, the state of being insane, yes. He says تغليظا عليه. تغليظا, التغليظ is to make it harsh on him because he did it willingly as a way of doing something haram. And of course, the cases, there's no end to it. Someone did something wrong, someone did something haram, and he became majnoon. Either the junoon becomes forever, like someone, takes some specific drugs, for example, that ruined his life and destroyed his brain, for example. Of course, the initial action was haram from him, but then after that, he's not responsible for his actions. Or that caused him to be in that state of, being insane for a few days, and then he comes back. So he has to make up the salah. This is basically what is being said. So then, وَلَا تَصِحُّ مِن مَجْنُونٍ وَلَا كَافِرٍ. So now الصحة here, after mentioning what's wajib, obligatory, then he says وَلَا تَصِحْ. It's not sahih, it's not valid if he prays it. الصلاة من مجنون, from someone that is insane. وغير مميز. In the sharh he says also غير مميز. Al-Mumayyiz is, as we know, that this is the child that is, Al-Mumayyiz is the child that knows to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. He's closer to the age of puberty, and usually the age that is given from 6 to 7, it's not a specific age, but that child is able to recognize there's something called obligation versus not, and he's able to make the salah and not to walk out from the salah, for example, different than someone that is غير مميز, a child 4 years old, 3 years old. Right? They might start the salah with you, but then they walk away, anytime they want. That means he's not aware of what he's doing. So this is the mumayyiz versus غير مميز. غير مميز, his salah is not valid. But the one that is mumayyiz, تصح منه. Salah is valid from him. He gets rewards for it. His family gets rewards for it, but it's not obligatory upon him. But here we're talking about the sihha. وَلَا تَصِحُّ الصَّلَاةُ مِن مَجْنُون. Majnoon prayed, his salah is not valid from him. But if he prays, it's... and that's why when people, they sometimes make someone that is insane to pray, why would they make it difficult for them? There's no need for them. There's no goodness. There's nothing whatsoever upon them, whether they make salah or not. If they do it, it's a way that you don't prevent them from doing something. It's not like you have to force them not to make salah, but you don't call them to make salah. You don't do anything about it. But there's also other rulings that comes with this, because as he says, لأنه لا يعقل النية, the majnoon or the غير مميز, he does not comprehend النية, intention. So he might be just standing because everybody's standing. He's not aware of what he's doing. But comes other things, like for example, if a غير مميز, a child that is 2-3 years old, standing in the saf, in Salatul Jama'ah, for example. Since the salah is not valid from him, that means this is an empty space. This is as if the saf is, as if no one is standing there. So people have to be careful with these things when you have a very young child. Either he occupies a spot in the saf that does not fit anyone that is adult, all the way at the end, for example, next to the wall, and it's a very small space that no one would stand there normally. Or to make him up front or whatever in a place where it's safe for the child. But in some situations where it's not safe or things can cause more disturbance, then it's okay in some situations. The salah is valid for the people, and the salah is does not break the salah or anything, but this is a way to perfect the salah because he occupies a place where the salah is not valid. Same thing with someone that is majnoon. And to do it, of course, in a good way. And also the majnoon, the norm is that you don't bring him to the masjid. If someone that is insane, and it's not about you're trying to be kind to him. He's unaware of what he's doing. Not talking about those who have some partial insanity. That's a different situation. But someone that is completely insane, why make it difficult for such an individual? But if it happened, also things then to be dealt accordingly so that it doesn't cause big harm or major disturbances and things of that nature. So ولا تصح من مجنون ولا كافر ولا تصح من كافر. The salah is not صحيح, it's not valid from a kafir, from a disbeliever. لعدم صحة النية منه, because his niyyah is not, intention is not there. He's a disbeliever. He does believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He does believe in the deen of Islam. So he's just making movements that the kufr, of course, is something that negates all actions. And any action has to have with al-iman, and this is very obvious, and this is consensus, of course. وَلَا تَجِبُ عَلَيْهِ. And the issue is it's not valid and it's not obligatory upon him. And what does that mean? بمعنى أنه لا يجب عليه القضاء. When they say لا تجب عليه, it's a mas'ala where is the kafir, as he's going to mention that, is the kafir mukhatab, is addressed by the furu', by the branches, by the actions of the deen of Islam. Of course, he's addressed by it, but he has to be a believer first. And he will be punished in the day of judgment if the message had reached him when it comes to the actions. So he did not make salah, he did what is forbidden, even though there is no sin bigger than al-kufr anyway, but he's supposed to be a believer to adhere to these commands. So when they say لا تجب عليه, it's not to relieve him from responsibilities. It's from the perspective of fiqh. That means if he becomes a Muslim, right? If we say that the salah is wajib ala al-kafir from that perspective, obligatory upon him, that means if he becomes a Muslim, he has to make up the salah that he missed since he reached the age of puberty. And of course, no one ever said that. So that's why this is the meaning of ولا تجب عليه. When it says لا تجب على الكافر, it means أنه لا يجب عليه القضاء إذا أسلم. It is not obligatory upon him to make qada or to make up the salah إذا أسلم. فالإسلام يجب ما قبله. Islam wipes away anything that was done before that. ويعاقب عليها وعلى سائر فروع الإسلام. But he will be punished for the salah that he missed. وعلى, if he continues to be a disbeliever till he dies, of course. وعلى سائر فروع الإسلام, and the different branches and actions about al-Islam, if he continues to be in the state of kufr till he dies. So that's part of the punishment in the day of judgment, because he was supposed to be a believer, and as a result of that he would do the acts of ibadah, and that's punishment is in the day of judgment, in the hereafter, not in this world. Then continuing with the kafir, some of the conditions here, some of the situations here. فإن صلى فمسلم حكما. فإن صلى فمسلم. Here some details. فإن صلى, if the kafir made salah. Now this is the principle in this matter is we only take, this is أحكام الدنيا. This is the rulings of this worldly life. Right? What's in the heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Who is this or that. But this is only the worldly rulings that we observe and we make judgment and we deal with. So, and that's why the details that is mentioned here is based on that. فإن صلى الكافر على اختلاف أنواعه. If the kafir made salah, different types of kufr, whether it's closer kufr, far away, doesn't matter, as long as he's a kafir, not a Muslim. في دار الإسلام أو الحرب, whether he did it among the Muslims or even in the war zone, a land that is دار الحرب. دار الحرب is the place or the land where a Muslim shows his identity as a Muslim. They will kill him, they will prosecute him. This is Darul Harb. Not the meaning of Darul Harb is the land of Kufr, for example. No, Darul Harb is different. Right? So في دار الإسلام أو الحرب جماعة أو منفردا. If a kafir, whether he is among the Muslims in Muslim land or Darul Harb or any place, whether he is in jama'a, prayed jama'a, or alone. You know, sometimes بمسجد أو غيره, in a masjid or other than the masjid. Sometimes you would find people that want to share with the Muslims their actions. They just to get the feel of it. So they come to the masjid and they join the saf and they make the harakat of the salah. And they're still upon their disbelief. They did not embrace the deen of Islam. So when a kafir does this, فإن صلى فمسلم حكما, he is Muslim. حكما worldly means, that means according to us, the way that we see that he's a Muslim, right? فلو مات عقب الصلاة, and there's rulings that applies as a result of this. Usually the norm is if someone does this, we know that he did not say the shahada yet, so he's not a Muslim, right? But this is when looking at the matter from a distance, or some, just looking at the act of the salah by itself. So for Muslimun hukman, someone that people, because otherwise there are bad rulings can come as a result of that. Some people saw someone making salah. He was not a Muslim, and now they see him make the salah. So what is that they would think of him? They would think that he's a Muslim. Hukman, this is, Allah knows best what's in his heart, but he Muslimun hukman, for a person to see that, he would give that ruling. And what's significant about this, he says, فَلَوْ مَاتَ عَقِبَ الصَّلَاةِ, if he died right after the salah, right? So there's ahkam here, there's rulings. Who is to inherit from him? Because اختلاف الدين, as it's going to come inshallah ta'ala in the chapter of inheritance, if people that would normally inherit from one another, but the differences of religions prevents them from inheritance. So a kafir and a believer. So if he dies right after the salah, تركته, what he left behind, his inheritance, لأقاربه المسلمين, then the rule of Islam will apply on him. Only the relatives that are Muslimin. Because differences of religion prevents one of the mawani' of al-irth. One of the things that negates or prevents a person from inheriting is the differences in religions. So if he dies after the salah, that means his relatives that are Muslimin will inherit from him. ويغسل, and he is to be washed. ويصلى عليه, and salatul janazah is to be prayed on him. ويدفن في مقابرنا, and to be buried in our graveyards. So he is to be treated as a Muslim. Not to ask, did he say this? Did anybody and bring witnesses? Did that person say the shahada? Because we don't know really if this is what is enough. This is sufficient. That we would treat him as a Muslim. Right. وَإِنْ أَرَادَ الْبَقَاءَ عَلَى الْكُفْرِ. So now in the case, a kafir made the salah. After he finished the salah, he wanted to continue to be upon al-kufr. He was not praying to be a Muslim. He's just making the movements with them. وقال إنما أردت التهزي, and he said, I only wanted التهزي. التهزي is mockery or something of that nature. لم يقبل, it is not to be accepted from him. That means according to the worldly rulings, he's a Muslim. And again, this is if there is a level of authority. That's why the religion is not a subject of mockery. But if he did it out of ignorance, this is a different situation. He doesn't know, right? Someone, as you see, for example, in the West, people do these types of things. It's not like, now I'm sorry, you're a Muslim and there's no chance for you to be anything else but Muslim. No, of course, because we don't have authority over it. وَكَذَا لَوْ أَذَّنَ وَلَوْ فِي غَيْرِ وَقْتِهِ. Same thing, the same ruling applies if he made adhan. وَلَوْ فِي غَيْرِ وَقْتِهِ. Even if the adhan was not in time of the adhan. If a kafir makes the adhan, what does that mean? He says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah in the adhan. So that means he become a Muslim. He said the shahada. So, and again, this is hukman. Right? So, no, but what if he doesn't believe in it? This is according to what we see. So that no one would accuse him of anything more than what a person sees physically from him. He says, وَيُؤْمَرُ بِهَا صَغِيرٌ لِسَبْعٍ وَيُضْرَبَ عَلَيْهَا لِعَشْرٍ فإن بلغ في أثنائها أو بعدها في وقتها أعاد. So continuing with fulfill these conditions, وجوبا الصحة. يؤمر بها صغير. الصغير, the one that did not reach the age of puberty yet, that's the صغير, small one. يؤمر بها, passive tense. He is to be commanded, he is to be ordered to make the salah. But any صغير لسبع, once he reached 7 years old, he is to be ordered to make the salah. That means this is not his responsibility, is something that is the responsibility of those who are in charge of him. He says, أَيَلْزَمُ وَلِيَّهُ. His wali, his guardian, his father, or if he does not have a father, his guardian, one in charge of him. يلزم, it becomes by necessity an obligation upon the wali, his guardian, أن يأمره بالصلاة, that he would make him make the salah, commands him to make the salah. And al-amr is not necessarily just words of mouth, make your salah. And al-amr doesn't have to be, sometimes people think that this is harsh. The amr is not something that you're given an authoritative command. Go and make your salah. It doesn't have to be like this. يأمره بالصلاة, that means let's go to salah. Did you make your wudu? Let's pray like this. So this is making sure that he would make the salah once he's 7 years old. يلزم وليه أن يأمره بالصلاة. Without having to find excuses for this. This is the deen, of course, and it's a very obvious thing. For example, when say 6 years old is the age where the parents, by law, they have to make sure that their kids, in some places, they have to go to school or they have to start education of some sort. So, and it's not done by, for the first instant that you would be harsh towards your child. This is the normal thing. So, أن يأمره بالصلاة 7 سنين, and Hijri calendar, not anything else. لتمام 7 سنين. أن يأمره بالصلاة لتمام 7 سنين. Once he reaches, he completed the 7 years then of Hijri calendar, then he has to be commanded to make the salah. That means the child does not have a choice to say no. It's upon the wali, not upon the child. وتعليمه إياها, and to teach him the salah, والطهارة, and the purification, how to purify himself, because now he's able to recognize these things. He understands what wudu means and so on. ليعتادها, so the commanding, the wisdom behind it, for him to get used to it, to become part of his norm, العادة. ذكرا كان أو أنثى, whether it's male or female. وأن يكفه عن المفاسد. You see this more than just the salah. وأن يكفه, that the parent or the guardian is to يكفه. الكف is when you stay away from something, and the word كف, this is the palm. So al-kaf is to stay away from something. You lift your hand out of something, that means you're not doing it. So أن يكفه عن المفاسد, that it's an obligatory thing upon the wali to make the child, once he reaches 7 years old, to make him away from corrupted matters, from haram. Not to say that he's only 7 years old. What's wrong for him to listen to music? What's wrong with him to watch movies and things that is haram and so on? He's still a child, is not responsible for his actions yet. Yes, he's not responsible for his actions. Yes, he does not get sins, but who gets sins? The parents. Those who would allow him to do such a thing. And not just the parents, those who are in charge of schools, for example, right? A principal in a school, that he allows the children to be exposed to haram. The teacher in the classroom that allows the children to be exposed to haram. This is all haram for them, right? Why? Because this is the responsibility of those who are in charge of them, which shows, the importance of making sure that we do the best we can. And this is the rights of our children when they're young, and guidance is in the hands of Allah. But this is the responsibility upon the parents, especially the father. He is in charge, and of course the mother, and everyone. But he is to be questioned about that first and foremost, to make him away from all kinds of mafasid. And these mafasid, or these corrupted matters, not just the physical actions, by the way, where the child is receiving his education, meaning what is being taught to the child. If you have a child 9 years old and he's being taught kufr, he's being taught disbelief or corrupted ideas, right? It's the responsibility of the guardian ones, not to say, well, he's going to be exposed to these matters later in his life. We're not talking about later in his life. We're talking about being a child, and to make sure that the masdar, as they call it, masdar at-talaqqi, the source of receiving, right? What's the child is receiving, his perception of things, conception of things, his belief, what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad. This has to be only one source, and one source only, which is the deen of Islam, the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. and not to distract him, not to disturb him, not for a child to be exposed to doubts or things of that nature. This is a very serious matter, of course. And that's why, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us, but when you have children, and I don't want to take the matter away from the subject of al-aqidah here, or the fiqh here, but when you have children, for example, very young, and they have, say, these phones, for example, right, and they're receiving all kinds of corrupted ideas, even when it comes to some of these games and the like of this, the guardian is responsible when they see that there is something, matters of shirk is being introduced to them, haram is introduced to them, right? So it's part of the obligations that is mentioned with commanding the child to make the salah, is to also make him away from corrupted matters. And the child, he has pure fitrah, so he's not going to be never exposed to haram. He's not going to be, I want to do the haram, right? So you get the child to be used to whatever good environment, and this is to the best of our ability, because we will be asked about it. وَيُؤْمَرُ بِهَا صَغِيرٌ لِسَبْعٍ. And that's why we need to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from any shortcomings that we did when it comes to raise the children. To finish this part, and then we go to the questions briefly, inshallah. This part here. ويضرب عليها لعشر. So يؤمر بها صغير لسبع. Once he's 7 years old, he is to be commanded to make the salah. But then no punishment. The punishment comes if he reaches 10 years old and he misses the salah. وأن يضرب عليها لعشر سنين, because the hadith of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, يضرب عليها, to be الضرب is to hit something, عليها because of it, when he's 10 years old. And of course this is consensus, we don't have to make it very clear, and the ulama, it's very obvious. ضرب غير مبرح, not something that is painful. It's not about physically causing the child to be in pain, but this is one of the forms of punishment, and that is after being taught and commanded and ordered to make the salah for 3 complete years, and he's used to it every day, 5 times a day. And if he misses it, he's not to be punished, it's to punish yourself. It's the guardians are the ones responsible for that. So that once they're 10 years old, there's no excuse for them to miss the salah. لعشر سنين. لحديث عمرو بن شعيب عن أبيه عن جده يرفعه. The hadith of Amr ibn Shu'ayb عن أبيه عن جده. This is, I call it سلسلة ذهبية, golden chain of narration. يرفعه is referring this to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. It means it's a hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. مروا أبناءكم بصلاتهم أبناء 7 سنين. Order your children to make the salah when they're 7 years old. وَاضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا لِعَشْرٍ. And اضربوهم, punish them, hit them if they are 10 years old and they're not making the salah. The seriousness of this act, do not allow them to miss the salah. وَفَرِّقُوا بَيْنَهُمْ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. And separate between them in the madaji'. Al-madaji' is the plural of madja', which is the place of sleep. Once they reach 10 years old, you don't make them sleep together in the same bed. It's an obligation. Before that, they might sleep together in the same bed, no problem. But once they reach the age of 10 years old, and that's before the age of puberty, of course, right? So this is 10 years old. It's a command to those who are in charge to make them sleep in separate beds. رواه أحمد وغيره. So this is reported by Ahmad. The last, فإن بلغ في أثنائها. If the child reached the age of puberty, في أثنائها, while or during the salah. أثنائها refers to the salah. بأن تمت مدة بلوغه وفي الصلاة. In the salah, he reached the age of puberty. Just as to take the mas'ala as it is like this. So that means he started the salah with the salah not obligatory upon him. And while in salah, he becomes in age of puberty. أو بعدها في وقتها. Or after the salah, but within the time of the salah. So he prayed dhuhr in the beginning time of dhuhr, and he was not yet in the age of puberty. And then he reached the age of puberty, or the state of puberty, 1 hour before Asr. Then أعاد, he has to repeat the salah. Because he started the salah not in the state of puberty, or the time of the salah is still there for him. And he become now an adult, he's responsible for his actions, so he has to repeat the salah. أي لزمه إعادتها. It means he has to repeat the salah لأنها نافلة في حقه, because الصبي, the child, the salah is an optional thing for him, nafila. And now, when he become in the state of purity, it's an obligation. So النافلة فلم تجزئه عن الفريضة. It is not suffice for him when it comes to the فريضة or the فرض. ويعيد التيمم لا الوضوء والإسلام. If he made tayammum for it, he is to repeat the tayammum, because the tayammum is different than wudu. But if he made wudu, the state of wudu is valid. Right? So if he made wudu while being before the state of purity, and then he become in the state of puberty, he does not have to repeat the wudu. And of course al-Islam. But for the tayammum, he has to repeat it, because the person, when he does not have water, he is addressed by the shara to look for water. So the tayammum is not valid anymore. But with the wudu, he's already in wudu. So it doesn't not one of the conditions of the wudu that a person has to be in the age of puberty. No. So this is we'll stop here inshallah, and then we continue next time inshallah. So hopefully this is clear. So what we took in the Z, I read. We've been used to do that from the beginning, but we stopped. I read what we covered, both with al-Rawd and al-Z. So follow the reading inshallah and see if there's anything that is not clear. He says, follow inshallah. كتاب الصلاة في اللغة الدعاء. قال تعالى وصل عليهم أي يدعو لهم. وفي الشرع أقوال وأفعال مخصوصة مفتتحة بالتكبير مختتمة بالتسليم. سميت صلاة لاشتمالها على الدعاء مشتقة من الصلوين، وهما عرقان من جانبي الذنب، وقيل عظمان ينحنيان في الركوع والسجود. وفرضت ليلة الإسراء تجب الخمس في كل يوم وليلة على كل مسلم مكلف، أي بالغ عاقل ذكر أو أنثى أو خنثى، حر أو عبد أو مبعض، إلا حائضا ونفساء فلا تجب عليهما. ويقضي من زال عقله بنوم أو إغماء أو سكر طوعا أو كرها أو نحوه كشرب دواء، لحديث من نام عن صلاة أو نسيها فليصلها إذا ذكرها، رواه مسلم. وغشي على عمار ثلاثا ثم أفاق وتوضأ وقضى تلك الثلاث. ويقضي من شرب محرما حتى زمن جنون طرأ متصلا به تغليظا عليه. ولا تصح الصلاة من مجنون وغير مميز لأنه لا يعقل النية. ولا تصح من كافر لعدم صحة النية منه. ولا تجب عليه بمعنى أنه لا يجب عليه القضاء إذا أسلم، ويعاقب عليها وعلى سائر فروع الإسلام. فإن صلى الكافر على اختلاف أنواعه في دار الإسلام أو الحرب جماعة أو منفردا بمسجد أو غيره مسلم حكما، فلو مات عقب الصلاة فتركته لأقاربه المسلمين، ويغسل ويصلى عليه ويدفن في مقابرنا. وإن أراد البقاء على الكفر وقال إنما أردت التهزي لم يقبل، وكذا لو أذن ولو في غير وقته. ويؤمر بها صغير لسبع، أن يلزم وليه أن يأمره بالصلاة، أو يلزم وليه. الولي is upon him, or if they put a fatah here, that means someone else to make it as an obligatory of. But here يلزم وليه أن يأمره بالصلاة لتمام 7 سنين، وتعليمه إياها والطهارة ليعتادها ذكرا كان أو أنثى، وأن يكفه عن المفاسد، وأن يضرب عليها ل10 سنين، لحديث عمرو بن شعيب عن أبيه عن جده يرفعه: مروا أبناءكم بالصلاة وهم أبناء 7 سنين واضربوهم عليها ل10 وفرقوا بينهم في المضاجع، رواه أحمد وغيره. فإن بلغ في أثنائها بأن تمت مدة بلوغه وهو في الصلاة أو بعدها في وقتها أعاد، أي لزمه إعادتها لأنها نافلة في حقه فلم تجزئه عن الفريضة، ويعيد التيمم لا الوضوء والإسلام. One thing is, if you're memorizing a Z, as you said, as we heard before, sometimes when you're reading from here, because as we said, الشرح is masji, it's all together, so the harakat sometimes the harakat here in what we're reading here in front of us is based on both الروض together. But if you're only reading a Z, there might be slight differences. So here, for example, ويضرب ويؤمر بها صغير لسبع, right? ويؤمر بها. If I'm reading only, I'm memorizing only a Z, right? So this is how it's going to sound. ويؤمر بها صغير لسبع ويضرب, not ويضرب, because why the يضرب here? Why there's fatha? Does anybody knows? Let's see if you know. Anyone? One, count to five. Two, three. أحسنت. Because of أن, right? Because أن here, this أن here, which is in الروض. وأن يضرب. أن makes the فعل مضارع منصوب with a fatha. But with the Z only, there's no أن. So ويضرب. So if you're memorizing, when you're being tested and memorized, don't say ويضرب. ويضرب عليها لعشر. عشر with a tanween, because there's no tanween here because there's إضافة. Because here it says لعشر سنين. You don't say لعشر سنين. لا, you say لعشر سنين. But here لعشر only if you're reading or memorizing only a Z. With the chapter of the Salah. Barakallahu fikum. There was questions. Now, if you have any questions, please. نعم. It says, first of all, the attendance code is as-salah. Attendance code is as-salah. Barakallahu fikum. Now we'll do the questions. Is the main reason for the salah of a majnoon or small child isn't accepted because they lack a clear niyyah or because they might not perform the actions correctly? It's from the start that they lack the clear niyyah. There's no niyyah. So the salah, لا تنعقد الصلاة. The salah is not established because they don't know what they're doing. So if a person has the niyyah and then he do things that is wrong in the salah, then it's to be fixed. If he knows that this is salah and it's important, that means he's not majnoon. Now, if someone drinks or smokes a haram substance and they become only slightly intoxicated, do they delay salah or pray it on time? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنْتُمْ سُكَارَى. So what constitutes it is the sukr, the intoxications. So if it's something that a person is aware of their actions, does it make him, they have to, of course, make the salah if they're aware of, they drank something but they're not intoxicated. Salah is obligatory upon them. So it's not about drinking, it's about the intoxications. No. فإن بلغ في أثنائها. نعم. If a person becomes بالغ while making the salah. While making the salah. So that's where he has to repeat it. نعم. Is salah permissible for someone who has a skull on their clothing or maybe wearing a ring with a skull? The issue of having an image or even praying while there are images in the room, statues and things like this, it doesn't invalidate the salah, but it's something that is not permissible and takes away from the rewards of the salah. But it doesn't make the salah invalid. Of course, a person, and it's a skull, not a face with its features. It takes the same thing. If it's a skull, it has to be removed as a head. Allahu A'lam. أثنائها, the word أثنائها means during it. Al-Athna is during this, and the alif is referring to the salah. So during the salah. So it's the word أثناء, it refers to a specific time. No. While. طيب, I don't want to keep you long, but there was a question about the subject of the al-hayd. Let's see here, the مسألة of المستحاضة المعتادة. Someone asked these two مسألة إن لم يكن لها تمييز صالح وإن لم يكن لها تمييز وكانت عالمة. So when we talk about without going through every word, and we can do that inshallah, no problem, but just to This two things I want to mention. First of all, some of the masail, some of the matters of fiqh, even a book like al-Rawd and Nahw and grammar and the like of this, one of the very important benefits, and I want you to listen to this very well because some people might, I wasn't aware of it for a long period of time. And I wish someone told me that very early when it comes to the way seeking knowledge. So, and this is something that can change the entire way of a person looking into knowledge and even teaching children knowledge. Is that again, if I say it, it's going to sound very obvious, but it's still, we have to get the reality of it. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he mentioned this and others, that al-ilm tarakumi, knowledge is cumulative. That means it doesn't all happen from the first time. So, as ulama they say, especially with the mutun, if you listen to an entire, see, we're making it very easy because we're translating and all of this. But if you listen to a matn or a dars and you understood even 10% of it, mashallah, you gained 10%. That's a great virtue, mashallah. So don't think, but I don't understand 90%. You understood 10%. Right? So, and then when you repeat, this is where the takrar, this is repetition of things. The more a person repeats, and that's something that shows the sincerity of the person when it comes to knowledge. The more you repeat, the more things will be comprehended. And it's very obvious in anything. You know, a child, you know, when they study math or something like this, it doesn't happen from the first day. Even the entire day of a school, they might not understand anything. But then you find them in an amazing way. They understand things at the end, after the end of the year or whatever, because it's a cumulative, you know, something that happens at tarakumi, something that gets built up. This is always with the knowledge that a person would earn, versus the necessary knowledge. It comes from the first instant. You know, tawheed, la ilaha illallah. It's not cumulative. It's not something that has to be built up. As far as, of course, the iman when it comes to the completion of the tawheed, but the fact that there's no one worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's it. And then a person increases iman. So having said that, one of the difficult chapters, for example, is al-hayd. So it's okay to be upon this. Okay, the second thing is, because of the time, I'll just say it briefly and then read again the sentences and see if it's clear. And if it's not, we can repeat it again. Without looking into the matn. Al-Mustahada al-Mu'tada. Al-Mustahada is the one that her blood doesn't stop. So she has continuous blood flow, and she is Mu'tada. She's not Mubtada'a. This is not her first time that ever she gets the menses. She's someone that has Ada. Mu'tada, that means she already has her Ada. With whatever means she knows her menses. But now something happened and now the blood is flowing more than what's al-Ada. So this is either she has a ada. If she has a ada, the ada means that she knows when does it start. Beginning of the month, the middle of the month, or when. She knows how many days, right? She knows she knows her month, as they say. She knows her month, as he says, that means she knows how many days of purity she has every month. So if a woman is like this, and you know the blood comes down more than her set days, she has 6 days. She knows that it comes in the beginning of the month, and she knows that the rest of the month she is pure. That means, what's the ruling for such an individual if the blood comes more than the 6? Is only to treat the haida 6. More than that is she's mustahada. She's to make wudu and to pray. This is al-mu'tada, that she knows. That's the first case. The second case, she is mumayyiza. She doesn't have a set ada days that is known, beginning, the middle, and so on, but she's able to differentiate between the different bloods. Blood of menses versus the blood of non-menses, the normal blood. Then she would treat the blood that is menses as menses. Right? So that's why it says, وَالْمُسْتَحَضَ الْمُعْتَادَ وَلَوْ مُمَيِّزَ. If she has ada, the ada takes over the tamiz even. Right? And she would only treat the ada as the days, which is the days of 6 days, for example. This is the only days that she would treat it as menses. This is according to the madhab here. There's other issues here, but we're just trying to understand these different cases. Now, if she forgot, this is the third case, or we can make this as the first case. Mu'tada, even if she's with tamiz, she goes by the ada, by the number of days and the place and so on. In nasiyatha, if she forgot, that means she forgot the ada. Right? She forgot whether it's 6 or 7 days or whatever there is, then she goes with the tamiz. She deals with the matter with the tamiz. This is blood of menses. This is not a blood of menses. If she has a tamiz salih, less more than 24 hours, less than 15 days. If she doesn't have tamiz, either she remember the days of the ada, then we already established this. But if she doesn't have the ability to differentiate between the blood, and it's valid, and she forgot the number of days and the time of it, the beginning of the month, the middle, and so on, then فغالب الحيض, then she is to stay with the norm of the haid, which is 6 or 7 days according to her family or something like this. But then details here is it refers to forgetting. Either she forgets completely everything. She forgets how many days of menses, and she forgets whether the menses comes in the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, the end of the month. So in that case, she would go by the 6 or the norm of her family, 6 or 7 days. But if she knows the numbers of days, she knows that the ada comes for 6 days, but she forgot if it happens in the beginning of the month, in the middle of the month, at the end of the month. So there's a partial forgetting here. So in that case, she then another question: is it most likely that she would get it in the second half of the month? Then she starts it in the middle of the month. If it's more likely in the first half of the month, then she starts from the beginning of the month. If she does not remember whether it's in the beginning or the end, then from every beginning of a lunar month. If she forgets when. And this is again a case where a woman, the blood is continuous one, and there's no tamiz. So that's if she knows the number of days, but she doesn't remember the beginning or the middle or so. So, but then if she doesn't have tamiz with the norm of the height, then if she forgot the numbers. So this is basically the two ones. I would stop here, inshallah, because of the time, and see if this is understood. Read it again, inshallah, and if someone still don't have the understanding of it, we can go through the text again, inshallah. But and ask me, send me a message, and I can reply to you also individually, inshallah. بارك الله فيكم. طيب بارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.